You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network and the John Fredericks Radio app. I am your Godzilla of the truth in America, your oracle of the deplorables, trucking truth every day. Our Open America Road Tour continues today. Liberty University, Jerry Falwell here in Lynchburg with us, the president of the school, Robert Hurt, former congressman, 5th District. I got to give a shout out to my friend Robert, because when I first started, I didn't even cover his area. I was in Hampton Roads when I started, and I met him. And I asked him if he would come on my show, and he said he wouldn't. I didn't cover his area, and he had no upside. But he came on my show when I first started 10 years ago, when nobody heard of me or cared. He came on my show every 2 weeks like clockwork. I remember that, Robert?
Yeah, absolutely.
And would come on, call in. No, there was just like Dave and Denver, Morgan, Rob Whitman. No agenda. To Mark Warner's credit, same thing. He just calls in when we get him on. There's no talking points or agenda or anything of that nature. But I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Nobody heard of me. Nobody knew who I was, and I didn't even cover your area. Yeah. And you came on every other week. Thank you.
Well, and your listenership has expanded, and there's a lot of upside now.
Well, you believed in me when not a lot of people did. So thank you for that. Also, Dave Brad is with us. Dave, former Congressman, 7th District, the Dean of the Liberty University Business School. Robert Hurt is the Dean of the Liberty University Government School. And also with us, Scott Lamb, by the way, author of a book, a spiritual biography, The Faith of Donald J. Trump. So we thank Scott for that. Now, we've got lots of things here to cover. But first, I got to give a shout out to one of our very long and trusted sponsors, James River Air in Central Virginia. They're open. I guess they're essential, according to the governor. They're also ready with solutions to keep your home and business safe and comfortable. They have strategies like UV light purification. I bet Dave never heard of that. Ionization, Dave. HEPA filtration. Safe and effective solutions that reduce viruses, allergens, and other airborne disease. You can call them for more information to keep your home and business healthy. Comfort never mattered more than it does now. So give them a call. It's easy to do. They'll take care of all your needs. 804-358-9333, 804-358-9333, or go to jamesriverair.com, jamesriverair.com. Dave, I want to start with you. The army that the DNC has established, they get out the vote army. We saw it in the 7th District. They bus people in on charter buses. They put them up in hotels 3 foot of a room. They put tents up. I would drive around. They were coming from Dallas. They came from Ohio, all in the 7th District, all for Spanberger. They came. Now, they had a special election in North Los Angeles, and the Republican 22-point swing there. And one of the things we found out is their army stayed home. So has their army evaporated because they are staying home behind masks?
I hope so, and I hope there's some other reasons going on too. I mean, the left has got a little split, right? They gave Bernie the boot again, and Biden's in. A lot of folks may not be happy about that split, and then some of these candidates that have run in my district and other districts have promised to be both leftists and centrists at the same time, and now they have voting records, and so the folks maybe get. And then I'm hoping the African American community, Hispanic, small business people, they're seeing very clearly who's responsible for the shutdown. There's no mystery about that, right? I mean, it's just split. The blue states are all shutting down. All the blue state governors are saying shut down. The reds are opening. They're successful. They're small state, lower tax, less regulation. DeSantis in Florida, perfect example of someone who navigated things very well. And so,
he's a rock star.
Yeah, no,
rock star.
He's a smart guy. He's very smart. Fan of President Trump. And then the Democrats had blue whatever. I mean, money was raining out of heaven. They outspent us 2-1 across the country. Right. They had money. I think this time we're going to be able to equalize some of that. We're catching up. President Trump has got a commanding lead.
Can we win the House back?
It's going to be tough. But I think this shutdown is a big deal. The guns piece, the shutdown piece, it's in play.
We got to win 18 seats.
Yep.
Let's look at the two Democrats that won in swing districts, Dave and Robert and Jerry, in Virginia our District 7, Abigail Spanberger's done nothing. Elaine Lauria's 2nd District, she's done nothing. Dave, and I'm going to get Jerry involved here. We haven't heard Abigail Spanberger or Lauria. These are just two examples. Nothing on China.
Right.
Nothing on the economy.
Yep.
Nothing on the shutdown. Nothing on guns. Nothing.
Yeah.
They say nothing.
They're very smart. They recruited national security folks with no record at all. You couldn't find information on them, and now you can't find any information on them. So, China is our chief geopolitical threat competition right now, and not a word from the Democrats. Pelosi actually used to be okay on Tiananmen, and now it's just stone silence because the billionaires have taken over. So the Democrats, they just wait for the last month and they do negative stuff and call you every name in the book, and it's effective. And I taught ethics and economics for 20 years at a small school there. I loved all the folks, loved all the kids, and they just put out in the newspaper and control the press, and you're in trouble.
Jerry?
I couldn't agree more. I think politics in the United States has degenerated into politics of personal destruction. They don't want to argue on the issues. They just want to destroy your character, destroy your credibility, and it's a shame because I remember I was talking to Alan Dershowitz the other day. He was back in the 80s when I was in law school. He was one of the liberals who said, "I may not agree with you, but I'll die for your right to say it." Mm-hmm. And you don't hear that anymore.
Right.
They've become authoritarian. They've become Nazi-like. I mean, almost. It's scary.
Mm-hmm. What about, let's go to Robert Hurd here for a second. 5th District, which you represented, we have a fight there now for renomination. Good friend of mine, Denver Riggleman. Complete disclosure, I've endorsed Denver. The president has endorsed Denver. I also started a 527 political action committee, Make Virginia Great Again. I'm chairman of that. My PAC is endorse Denver Riggleman, and we do independent expenditures for
That's why you're not a part of the White House Press Association.
Yeah, exactly. Well, once I started
because you're biased.
Yes, I'm biased. But at least I'm honest and transparent about it, right? I mean,
right.
And I'm a Trump delegate and all that. That's why they kicked me out. So I guess Acosta's not biased, right?
Exactly.
He's not biased. Unbelievable. So, look, Denver's done a fabulous job. I mean, I love Denver personally. I want him there. Now he's being challenged by one of your own. I know this is sensitive here. Bob Good, who says he's winning. This is a convention. I think it's the middle of June or something, drive-by. You represented the district. Yeah. Why have they turned on Denver? And
first of all, Dave and I both represented congressional districts in Virginia, and I've always believed that the 5th District was far superior than the 7th District for a lot of reasons. James Madison comes to mind, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, John Marshall. Patrick Henry's buried in the 5th District. It's got and the first member of Congress from the 5th District was James Madison. It's all been downhill since.
I have no rebuttal.
No, but with all that said, I love being able to represent the people of the 5th District, the finest, independent-minded folks. I think it's extremely important that we have conservative leadership in representing us in Washington. Because the people are independent-minded, they think for themselves. I'm not sure my endorsement one way or the other of either of the candidates makes a difference, and so I've stayed out of it. But I have to say, I think that it has become ugly, and I think that everybody needs to remember that if you ding your fellow Republican up too much, you're going to end up losing in the fall. And so my counsel would be to dial it back, fight fair, and not make this into the huge mistake that it could be, handing it over to the Democrats.
Robert, they've already done that. I mean, they turned it into a convention, and everybody knows I hate conventions. I backed Joe Morrissey's bill in the state Senate to ban them for federal and state offices. I think they're horrible. It's all shenanigans. But what did Denver do? I mean, all this because Denver presided over a marriage of a gay couple that worked on his campaign that he was friends with. I mean, that's his right to do that. But right now, Bob Good is saying that he got 62% of the delegates. They've got people that are unit chairs, that are on the Bob Good payroll. It's the same old stuff that's going on.
I think Christian conservatives need to step back and realize that Denver Riggleman was a businessman. And so when he came in, he was just like Donald Trump. He didn't tote the party line. He towed the party line. He said he didn't do focus groups and say, what should I say? What shouldn't I say? What wedding should I officiate over? He just spoke his mind because he'd been in business his whole life. And it doesn't mean he's not a conservative. And the social issues that Christian conservatives are concerned about, a congressman can't do anything about. A congressman can't change the Supreme Court's position on gay marriage. The congressman can't change the Supreme Court's Roe versus Wade decision. Only the president can appoint justices to change those two issues. So it's not relevant for a congressional seat, in my opinion. Now, when those cases are overturned, each state legislature will have to make a decision on those issues.
Right.
That's it. So what does that?
So what does it have to do with Denver?
What does it have to do with Congress?
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So, Dave, I think you backed Denver, right? You've publicly endorsed Denver.
I don't endorse, so I'm staying out of it. I'm just encouraging what the gentleman before me said, and that is, end of the day, when I had my big win 5 years ago, there was a surge. There was a Tea Party surge over issues that mattered. And so the Republicans are battling right now in my 7th district. They're battling it out too. But at the end of the day, all the folks out there need to rally their neighbors, the folks they go to church with, the people they work with. It faded. The Tea Party movement faded. That energy. Now I think it's coming back. President Trump's in office. He's given plenty of reasons and plenty of difference between him and Biden.
And the lockdown.
And the lockdown. And so that has to happen again. I'm not seeing it yet on the Republican side. And part of that is our leadership in the House and Senate. They need to give the American people the rally cry.
Leadership?
The
Republican leadership?
Yeah.
Is that not an oxymoron?
Well, I'm not going to go there, but yeah.
I can go there.
Yeah. They put it this way. If you don't know what their message is, that's a problem.
Right.
And the American people, I don't think they know right now. So
Right.
President Trump's made it clear what his agenda is. We need to quit trying to balance everyone up there. We just get a few planks out there in front of the American people, make it very clear the split between us and the Dems on China policy, on opening up, on being pro-business, tax cuts. It couldn't be more stark. If you put that in front of the American people, we win. But if it's not loud and clear, the Dems are very good at negative attacks.
But you're right. The fair trade, the economy, all those things.
China.
The creeping socialism. Those are the things that are going to determine how our children live. And those are the things that we need to be concerned about. As much as I care about the social issues, I don't see where my position on those issues is furthered by supporting a congressman that has one view or the other on those issues. I'm sorry, but I know it's probably surprising for me to say that, but I just don't see where the U.S. Congress has that.
No, look,
ability.
I think that's true. I think that's a very logical position. But Denver's in the fight of his life right now. The Good campaign is saying they've got, I think, Robert, they said they had 62% of the delegates signed up, and people are familiar with this. It's a convention, but it's not a convention because they can't gather, so you're going to have to drive by locations, put your ballot in the box, and so there's no speeches. I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. But it's a pretty big district. Robert, have you looked at like where they're like? Do you just drive to certain places and hand in your ballot? How does that thing work?
I'm not sure how the convention or the nominating contest in June will work.
Right.
I've read about it and don't know much more than what you've said. But you have to think about the 5th district and how it's constructed.
Right.
I mean, 20 years ago it didn't even include Charlottesville and Albemarle.
Right.
Now it includes Charlottesville and Albemarle.
Right.
Huge population there,
Right.
and it goes all the way up through Madison County, all the way up to Fauquier County.
Right.
So it's a giant district, largest land-wise in the state, and the political influence has moved from South Side, Danville, Pittsylvania, Campbell, decidedly into the center of the district, which
Right.
is
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville and Albemarle. I mean, it's kind of Death Valley for a lot of Republicans. So and because of the growing influence of that area, I think that Republicans cannot take it for granted that they will always win,
Right.
Depending on the candidate.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the issues with Bob Good. If he does win, the district, which is off the playing field right now for the DNC, is immediate, goes into play. They're going to pour a ton of money in there. He's a weak candidate. He has no experience. And he would have won a convention with a handful of people. I mean, I think they got 3,000 people signed up or something, and he's got 1,800 of them. So you're going to be the nominee with 1,500 people. I mean, it's just
why not
it's
stick
insane.
Why not stick with a safe candidate
Exactly.
who's already proven he could win?
Right, exactly. Proven he can win, and the president's endorsed him, and he's there on every single major issue we have that matters. And so, to the life of me, I don't see this. But I tell you, Robert and Dave, and I know Dave might agree with me on this, but the Republican Party of Virginia is going to stay in a dreadful minority position until you get rid of these conventions. It's hand-to-hand combat. It's they cheat, they manipulate it. They're doing what they're doing in the fifth. I mean, it have a primary, and then somebody's going to win. You have to run a campaign, do mailers, get robocalls, knock on. You have to run a campaign.
And you let your servicemen and women vote.
Exactly.
They get a vote if you have a primary.
Right.
They don't get a vote in these other things.
Conventions are ridiculous. Okay, let's change over to opening up the economy, Dave. I'm going to start with you on the demand issue. A lot of people in marketing and consumer analysis have told me it doesn't really matter if you open things up because nobody's going to go out and nobody will go to restaurants and nobody will travel, and so that's going to force us into a depression no matter what. You're an economics professor, doctor. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the data are in now, right? Before we were speculating on 3 million unemployed, 10 million, 20, now it's 30 million unemployed. And so we're approaching a 20% unemployment rate. And the government incentives, some of the paychecks have added to the incentive problem of people getting back to work. In my view, you're much better staying with a firm. Some folks have left firms and are taking a check in the short run because you'll get more, but they cut their lifeline off from permanent employment.
Because eventually that will end.
Yeah, and so right now it's just all the retail sectors, the travel, the entertainment, they're crushed. And they're going to have to get entrepreneurial and refashion themselves in some way. Others, the Walmarts, et cetera, the data came out, they're very strong. And so that's good. But you're right. On average, you got 30-40% of the workforce, and unfortunately, it's at the lower end of the income spectrum, right? And so at Liberty, we're working with some of the churches around here, trying to get the labor force and get job opening announcements posted within the churches, because there are people that can hire and that are hiring now, but it's very hard for folks who don't have internet access or aren't sophisticated with technology to find those jobs. So we all need to reach out to our neighbors and help them. But it's a long, hard slog. There's no V recovery coming in, right? It's not just like there was some shock to the money system and the economy's going to come roaring back. But on the other hand, the American people are entrepreneurial, and I think just this planning horizon, just the psychology of saying we're opening, is hugely helpful and powerful, right? So they're going to start. Everyone's planning now. So the restaurants are 50% capacity, outdoors, or whatever. They're going to find creative ways of getting sales up. And over time, they'll navigate some way to success.
So Steve Mnuchin, Secretary Treasury,
Yep.
Larry Kudlow, you know them both. They have both said the economy in the third quarter is going to come roaring back.
Yeah.
True or false?
It's true in terms of percent growth, right? I mean, when you go down to a very low number, you're going to have a dramatic increase in the percentage of growth. But that still doesn't get you back to where you started from, right? So we're going to have, say you grow at 6 or 8%. That's unheard of, right? So that's great. But that 6 or 8%, we're down. Some sectors are down 40, 60%. And so if you grow at 6, 8, that gets you back on, back toward the positive side. But it's going to take months and months and months of hard work to get back.
I'm gonna go to Scott and Jerry here. Scott, as the economy comes back, you were saying earlier that you thought there might be. Remember the moral majority that Jerry's father started, Jerry Falwell Sr., that there might be a political resurgence of Christians that get re-engaged with the system now, that were shocked over this lockdown, shocked that all these people are out of work?
Yeah, so people cast, the word moral is you can fill a lot of things in it. It's like a bucket. So, it's not just about the social issues. We were talking about that a minute ago. Mass layoffs and mass unemployment, that's a moral issue, especially when the government has been driving that through the shutdown of the economy. And so when you have 2.4 million new jobless claims reported this morning, 36 million altogether since this started, that's a moral issue. If there's no real fundamental reason for it except for the government's intrusion into the economy, that's a moral issue. Those are people that don't have work, they don't have employment except for the handout that they're getting from the government, perhaps. Kids aren't getting education. In some schools they're like, well, are we even going to send them back in the fall? That's a moral issue, and so we should, like James Carville said back in '92, it's the economy, stupid. Christians should take a cue from James Carville and say, listen, it's the economy, stupid. That's actually a moral point. Let's get the economy rebooted. Let's get people back in the jobs. People have a divine sense of calling to work, a vocation. That word means calling. Get them back to work. Domestic abuse is on the rise. Mental health issues is on the rise. Kids at home all day in unsupervised situations. They say pornography use among young children is on the rise horrifically in the last 2 months. Those are all moral issues.
In the last 2 months?
In the last 2 months,
lockdown.
because they're all at home and there's no supervision, and so they're spending 10 hours a day on the computer. All sorts of things that we won't know about for a couple of years. But those are all moral issues, and that can be absolved. That can be changed again if we could just get the economy going and get people back into the normal woof of what we expect. So,
Jerry, if there's anybody that understands a turnaround, it's Jerry Falwell Jr. Everybody knows the story when you came and took the college over, the state it was in, and how you turned it around so quickly, and now you've built a powerhouse. Now we're in a turnaround with in the economy. If you were advising Treasury Secretary, other leaders in the administration on turning this economy around based on what you were able to do, what would be your number one message?
Don't bail out the blue states who that mismanage their states for generations now. Let them go bankrupt. That will tell the people in those states, whoa, our leadership has let us down, and maybe they'll start voting differently. Until that happens and the Congress, the House and the Senate come back in line with President Trump, I don't see how we're going to fix it. I mean, getting spending under control is a very unpopular thing with voters, and you got to have a strong House, Senate, and you got to have the right president to make those tough decisions, and it's got to be made, because you can't, when you spend money that you don't have and you have a deficit, it's the same as taxing people. And I think with Liberty University, the turnaround we had here was just using business 101 principles, treating students like customers. And I spent 20 years as the attorney here working with my dad, trying to cover paychecks that had gone out the Friday before with help from donors and lenders. And you have to fight through those kind of battles, but then when you finally do break out, you appreciate it more. But that's the reason I supported Donald Trump, because I saw what applying business principles to Liberty University accomplished. We went from almost on the edge of bankruptcy to probably, well, we have the 16th largest, I think I already said that, 16th largest unrestricted endowment in the country, and in just a matter of 13 years. It took Harvard from 1636 to 1965 to hit $1 billion. And so we're at $2 billion now. So it's just business 101. You got to run this country like a business, and that's why I supported Donald Trump. And the only way he can do that, though, is if he has the right Senate and House. And I really think that these blue states, if he let enough of them go bankrupt, I think people will wake up. and stop voting for these idiots.
So what would you tell Larry Hogan, neighboring state of Maryland, who has locked down the business? His Maryland now has $1 billion. It's $1 billion deficit they're running. Of course, there's no money coming in because he shut everything down, and he still has no date to open. Right, Larry Hogan, Republican governor. Then he cries and goes on the Sunday talk shows and whines that the Trump administration is not bailing out his state. Well, what would be your response to Governor Larry Hogan, Jerry? Thomas
Jefferson, his farm was right next to mine. I mean, where I live now, and at Poplar Forest, and he and other founders said we need citizen legislators. We need people who have businesses, who have enterprises, to come in, serve for a short time, and then leave. These professional politicians don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know anything about business. Robert Hert's a good example. He came in, served for a short time, went back to his civilian or whatever he was doing before and what he's doing now at Liberty, and Dave Brat was only there a short time. It's just, that's what we need. It's just, we don't need professional politicians because they don't understand taking a risk, getting a reward, and just business. It's that simple. That's why our founders said we need citizen legislators.
Well, we have the exact opposite now.
Yeah.
All right, when we get back, we're going to open up for your phone calls, 888-480-JOHN, 888-480-5646. You can also go to Facebook Live, ask us a question there. You can text a question, 692-1710. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network live at Liberty University with our all-star panel, Robert Hurt, Jerry Falwell Jr., the president, Dave Brat, and Scott Lamb. Keep it right here. One more segment coming up. Fredericks Radio Network, great to have you with us. I'm your Godzilla of the Truth in America, your Oracle of the Deplorables. Got one more segment. We're live at beautiful Liberty University. I love it here. It's so much fun in Lynchburg. Tomorrow, Charlottesville. We're going to the Pete Snyder Virginia 30-Day Fun. Denver Riggleman is joining us there live. He'll be there for a couple hours. We understand it. And Martha Bonetta will be there, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Then next week, our road tour, the John Fredericks Open America Road Tour, goes into the belly of the beast. We're going to New Jersey. We're going to start in Cape May. Jeff Van Drew, the Democrat that's now a Republican, he is fit to be tied over what Governor Murphy has done. He's going to be with us live in Cape May. We think that's on Wednesday, so I'll be in Cape May, and then we'll go up the coast as we talk to business owners in New Jersey about how they're going bankrupt because the governor won't let them open their business, and now they're shutting down people that are trying to sell online. I don't know how that solves anything about COVID-19, but all coming up next week. We're here with our all-star panel. Jerry Falwell Jr. with us. He is the president of Liberty University. Robert Hurt, former congressman, 5th District, Virginia, and the dean of the School of Government here. Dave Brat with us, former congressman, District 7, dean of the business school, and Scott Lamb is with us. He's director of communications for Liberty University. So we're all that. So look, Jerry, offline, you told me that the president called you the other day that he runs into Liberty graduates all over the place.
Yeah, he was very complimentary about how. He said, "Joe, you must be doing something right." I said, "Well, we try to create a family atmosphere like you do with your family up there." And I said, "It really works." I said, "It creates students who don't feel entitled to the best jobs just because they went to the right schools. They're students who want to prove themselves, and so employers love them." And I told him about our come-in lawsuit against the New York Times, and I'm not going to repeat anything he said, but we had a nice conversation.
I don't think he's a fan of the New York Times, the failing New York Times.
I didn't get that impression.
Right, I don't think he's a fan of that, but that's coming out, right? And you're basically suing them for what? Libel, defamation, what? Can you go there?
There's so many different counts. It took me an hour to read the complaint, the first draft of the complaint. Day before yesterday. So
but you're basically going to hold them accountable for saying things that were not true.
In part, and lots of other things too.
And when that comes out, you'll come on my show and explain it, right?
It'll be fun. Yes.
Okay, you'll do that. Speaking of defamation lawsuits, so Joe Morrissey, he's my buddy, and we backed him for state senate. I had to beg him to do a radio show. Dave knows this. I tried to get him to do it. He wouldn't do it. Finally went to his house, talked to his wife, Myrna. I brought Ann with me. If I ever need something done, as Dave knows, I take Ann. She's the closer. So Ann came with me. We talked to him, and he's done a radio show on my network. Very successful. Got him elected to the state senate. So he's there with me in the studio. He's my buddy. I hang out with him. I go to his house. Okay. So it is what it is. And so also my friend is Barbara Comstock. So he's running for senate. Barbara, former congressman, comes on my show. She backed Roz Dance, and she comes on. And Joe's a friend of mine. She's a friend of mine. They go on my show. And she blasts Morrissey and says all the stuff about him. And so based on that radio interview, Joe is now suing Barbara for defamation. And the only evidence they have is the tape from the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Oh,
so I had to go to call Barbara. I'm like, I didn't have anything to do with this. And so she said, did Joe ever talk to you about it? Now, here's why Joe is my friend. I said, Joe, you never talked to me about this. And he said, I wanted you to have clean hands. So never talked to me, didn't know anything about it until it hit. And so I have clean hands. I don't know anything about it. But I got two friends of mine, and he's suing her. And it's all because she comes on my show. So anyway, but I think it ties into what you're saying, that, there's now a movement that you just can't say things that are not accurate. Right. And nobody's been held in account for that.
Yep. Well, and I all this kind of ties together. I interviewed Matt Whitaker yesterday, former head of the Justice Department.
On your podcast?
Yeah, Attorney General, yeah.
The Brat Pack.
Yeah, and he's got a new book out this week, so we'll put a plug in for called Above the Law. And it's all about the deep state that he experienced. He went in there under the Trump administration.
This is Matt Whitaker.
Matt Whitaker. And he'll tell you most of the employees are, stand-up citizens, work hard every day, all day, doing hard, heavy lifting. But there's enough. They came after him. He's head of the agency under President Trump, who's head of the executive.
Was he head of what, Homeland Security?
Justice Department. Whole Justice Department. After Sessions.
Oh, that was before Barr.
Sessions. Yeah, before Barr.
Between Sessions and Barr.
Yep. And so we got talking about the deep state, and we were doing a podcast. I said, look, you're talking to a lot of young people across the whole country. Give them a sense of what this thing is. And the media, he brought up the media over and over and over again. And so it's not just what they cover, it's what they don't cover. Right? So if you go, why aren't they reporting on China? Why aren't they reporting on issue after issue? Right? Why aren't they reporting on Flynn and the exculpatory evidence that came out? Right? You got people in the deep state that wrote notes. Now it turns out, right? Head of the FBI said, what should we do with this Flynn guy? Should we fire him, or should we do this or do that? Right? It's the whole Russiagate thing was a hoax. And the American people are not going to learn, right, just as with the Liberty case. They never write the piece when they're wrong. Whoops, Russiagate was all false. Whoops, Kavanaugh was all false. Whoops, Ukraine was all false. Whoops, the World Health Organization, everything we said about it has been a lie, right?
No, they just go on to the next lie.
They just go on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear there's talk now of overturning New York Times versus Sullivan. It's just been being discussed. But was that passed in the 60s? And that's really was the license to lie.
Jerry,
for the American
elaborate
media.
For our listeners that aren't familiar with that.
That was the case that said that if you're a public figure, it doesn't matter if the press lies about you. You have to prove that they had malicious intent.
Right.
And that's a very tough
hard
stand.
to do.
Yeah.
And that was a license to lie for the New York media. It's not like that in England. I don't believe. And so once that case is overturned, I think we'll have a whole lot more honest press. And I think they'll be a lot more accountable. And it could change a lot of things. I mean, it's so many people just believe what they hear in the press. And I just would love to see that case overturned.
Well, and they can be powerful. And let's get back to Morrissey just for a second, because it ties into that. He's suing. He's also suing the Richmond Times-Dispatch.
Good.
Joe
good.
ran for mayor in Richmond, and Dave knows this because he was there. Joe ran for mayor. This was 2016. We backed him, and Joe was ahead the entire time. Now, nobody in Richmond, nobody in the power structure wanted Joe because he was outside the system. He didn't play ball. Chamber hated him. Business hated him. Everybody hated him because they can't tell him what to do. He's completely independent, raises his own money. He doesn't need any of them. But he was ahead the entire time. The Richmond Times-Dispatch did 2 hit pieces on him in the last 2 weeks, and Stoney beat him, and they ended up back in Stoney. So he's got a lawsuit there. But that's one of the issues.
Yeah.
Is you know, the Richmond Times-Dispatch didn't want Joe as mayor. They had an agenda. They took him out, and what they said was lies.
Yeah.
Where's the accountability for that?
Yeah, well, and I'll just point out something that's tied in with it when President Fall was talking about business, right? Business used to be, in economics, competition means you have a lot of firms competing against each other. The new business mentality in Richmond and going up to the swamp is this crony thing, where the business guys hire an attorney, and if you write one line into the U.S. code, you got a monopoly for the next 20 years, and you're a gazillionaire, right? So we're losing the business class to the crony class, right? There's not enough businesses that are willing to compete mano a mano, firm to firm, right? They want an advantage that's given to them by the government, and that is a scary thing. The Republicans used to have the Judeo-Christian piece, the rule of law piece, and the business piece. And if we lose the business piece because there's too much temptation, right, that you got to go via the swamp and you got to lock in some special deals to become big. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the bigs, right? The big automobile, big healthcare, big technology, Facebook, all these guys, right? Amazon. These guys they're more than monopolies. They have market power over the whole country, and they can decimate you no matter who you are. And the founders never intended for it to be that way.
And the failing newspapers are now, to survive, their advertisers are paying them not to run ads, but to write articles, negative articles about their competitors.
Advocacy. That's exactly
it looks like an article.
I mean,
but it's really just
just advocacy. When I was in the business, and I was in the newspaper business a long time, I mean, there was a very, very distinct separation of powers. And I was on the editorial side, and like we wouldn't even, when I was editorial director at the Tribune Company, we would not even meet with news. We wouldn't even meet like the news director, the reporters. They could never come in my meetings. We could care less what they did. You go cover the fire, the cat in the tree, or whatever. We'll do opinion. But as everything downsized, it changed, and then they started to merge. And then the New York Times went to something called news analysis, which was the start of opinion in news. It was news, but they were analyzing it. And then there were columns on the front page, and that's kind of the whole thing.
And now it's
changed.
just all about clickbait.
Clickbait, and that those ads are programmable ads. But to what Dave was saying, and Robert knows this, during the negotiation, remember the last days of the PPP negotiation? So I was in D.C., and I went, there was one day, it was just like 3 days as that was being negotiated. I went to the Cannon building to see, I think, some Senator Warner, I think. And man, that place, it was crawling with lobbyists. I mean, it was like cockroach central. You had all these guys, they had like $20,000 Rolex watches on, $15,000 Armani suits. They were all over those senators. And what did they do? They wrote in lines in the PPP that passed at midnight, which favored
Walmart.
Walmart, big businesses,
Target.
So Target,
And then the poor folks on Main Street,
Exactly.
like in Chatham, Virginia, they have to close.
They got nothing because the big company, they had written that in. So the bigger companies pilfered majority of the money, right? Because the lobbyists came and they got, just like Dave said, they got one line in there that allowed them to do this. So one of the lines was, I think it was, to be eligible, you had to have under 500 employees.
Right.
So they had this line that said, if you have regional businesses, then those count. So I could have 50,000 employees, but 10 regions with 490, and I could get $10 million. I mean, that Los Angeles Lakers got $4.5 million. They're worth what, $3.5 billion?
Yep.
Right? UVA got millions of dollars, and they have endowments of billions of dollars. So But it was those lobbyists.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they say they're going to send money to Liberty, but we've already said that every penny will go to our resident students who are inconvenienced this spring, and so we're not keeping a nickel of it.
But Dave and Robert, you were both there. How do you combat the influence there of the lobbyists? And just as an aside, you both live there. I'm there during the week when I'm not traveling like this, but you have to live there to understand how corrupt it is, right?
Yeah. No, it's hard to explain. The American people think you're exaggerating. It certainly can't be true. The young kids are infatuated with socialism now, in general, not at Liberty. But socialism is on the rise. Bernie's cool. They're considered authentic. They're authentically communist. And this is after communist China, Soviet Union collapsed on its own weight. So the evidence is coming in. China's still there. They're persecuting their own people. We're not talking about the Chinese people. It's the CCP, right? The Communist Party. And they sent us this virus, right? They're spending more on building islands to fight us out in the sea. They couldn't afford a padlock for their viral lab. And something escaped, right? Something got out. And how big government, socialism, communist, big state can still be in play in the American mind, I don't get it. But
and the United States actually contributed a lot of money to that Wuhan lab.
Yeah, right.
Under Fauci.
Right.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Under Dr. Fauci.
Right.
Robert?
To your question, though, it's why elections are so important, because what happens to people is they go up there and they care more about the next election than they do about the next generation.
Yep.
That's and as a consequence, we end up with what we've got. And so you have to elect people who will not forget where they came from, who they actually work for, who pays their salary. It's what elections are all about. We have to get back to that. And I have to say, being able to be here at Liberty University and work with these students does give me hope for the future. It's dark out there.
Right.
But to be able to pour into these students and prepare students who will go to Washington and fill the ranks and be a shining light, it's so fulfilling, and that's why this place is here to stay for a long time.
Well said.
The break the back of the lobbyists, and you look at Washington, right? You got all these $1 million homes, right? These mansions in the surrounding areas, and it's always marvelous to me. You go there,
richest counties in the country.
All these people have all this money, and it's like they produce nothing, they make nothing, they manufacture nothing, they grow nothing,
right.
They invent nothing.
Right.
It's like, how do they have all this money?
Yep.
They take it from all of the rest of us.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and one hint to the voters out there, because Congressman Hurt's right on this, your vote matters. And the politicians, if you want to hold your politician accountable, right? Newt Gingrich had it right with a contract for America. And
right.
I copied a little. I wanted the people to hold me accountable. So I put myself out there. Everybody knew how I was going to vote. I couldn't deviate from it because I was out in public. I signed it. And we need, if you want your politician to keep their word, make them put it on paper ahead of time and sign their name to it. And leadership up in D.C., same thing. If they won't put their name to it, they're going to fudge. They're going to once they get in there, it's a new game.
Yeah. It does all start. It does all start with leadership. That's the thing we've been talking about all morning. Steve Jobs said if you want to make everybody happy, go sell ice cream.
Yeah.
That's why I'm proud of Liberty.
Go sell ice cream.
Yeah, our founder said if everybody is saying bad stuff about you, you must probably doing something right. And his son is our current leader and pretty much lives by the same creed. So I'm glad that we're at the tip of the spear point on a lot of these things. We get a lot of heat because the left knows that we're doing something and we're producing a generation of people, and even the ones in our online, out there in the workforce and in the military, they're getting something that that other kids aren't getting, and so there's a lot of pushback, and so it starts with leadership. It starts with Jerry's leadership, being willing to take the heat, and a lot of people want the glory of leadership, but they don't actually want to take the heat of being a leader. And so I think President Trump does a good job with this. These congressmen sitting here, through your radio program, Jerry, that's what leadership means, is actually leading the people to do something that they otherwise wouldn't think to do or wouldn't have the motivation to do. So,
but it's hard to come by these days, and a lot of people, as you go there, you follow them. They get there and then they become part of the, I don't know, corruption. Dave and Robert, too strong of a word, but they become part of the system.
Yeah.
Right? They just change. I mean, and your former buddy Boehner is an example of that. I mean, he started out, he was a firebrand.
He was good.
He was a firebrand.
He
He was part of Newt Gingrich's contract. He
Yeah.
was on his leadership team. And, they just change over time.
Yeah.
And they become part of the system.
The same thing's true with pastors. Pastors nowadays
Really?
are not. They don't have the guts, or for lack of a better word, to stand up for controversial issues, and so it's sad. But they just go along with whatever their congregation wants to hear. So many of them, especially the younger generation, and we're trying to change that here at Liberty. But they used to be the leaders. They used to be the ones who were not afraid to speak out, and to take the heat. But they don't like heat anymore. They won't.
What changed, Jerry?
I don't know. Scott, you might.
Yeah, I think, going all even back to the 70s, the loss of belief in institutions, I think that still drips over us. The baby boom generation said, let's just, rip apart all the institutions and gut out, the moral fiber and laugh at heroes, say there is no such thing as hero, and then see what we get. And what we get is nobody wants to be a hero, nobody wants to stand up, nobody wants to have courage. And then we say, well, that's not fun. What kind of country are we going to have with that? And well, yeah, dummy, that's why we didn't want to go in that direction. But there's always a pivot point. There can be a pivot point. We're not already heading off the cliff. It's not hopeless. We can have a pivot point. Hopefully here at Liberty University, 100,000 students enrolled at any given time, 100,000 online, 15,000 here residentially. That can be a pivot point. I mean, all
Right.
it takes is some institutions reclaiming, a moral, a courageous center,
Sending
and making a pivot.
20,000 a year.
Yes,
graduate.
exactly.
Yeah.
20,000.
Exactly.
My father's generation of pastors were a whole different breed than what we're seeing now. They were the ones. My dad didn't care who left the church. He'd say what he thought.
Well, we've got
if
to,
half as many showed up next week, that's fine.
Yeah.
we have to continue that when we have you again, because I really hadn't thought about that. We're running out of time, and I got to end with one more Robert Hurt story. May I?
Please.
It's the second Robert Hurt story. So it's about 7 years ago. I'm doing my show at Hargraves University in Chatham, I go down the street and it's the Hurt Street, right? So, okay, so the congressman's got a street named after him. So I do my show there, and I'm like, why is that street named after him? Oh, he lives over there, that house, and they named this. So I'm like, okay, what comes on my show? I'm just gonna go over there because you guys were out of session,
Right.
Recess. So I'm done with my show, and I'm in Chatham, and I'm on your street named after you. So I go and knock on your door, and your wife answers, wonderful lady, and I'm like, I'm here to see Robert Hurt. He comes on my show. I just went to Chatham. Is he home? She said, no, he's at the Home Depot or the Lowe's or something. But she said, so he's not here. I'm sorry. But she said, I just baked these cookies. Want some? I'm like, Mrs. Hurt, do I look like I need any more cookies? She's like, yes. And so she says, so she comes out with this huge batch of cookies. So I didn't get to see you,
Yeah.
but I did eat your wife's cookies. That's
You're
my
welcome
last
anytime.
Robert Hurt story. I'm sure she told you that. Okay, that's a wrap. I want to thank everybody for being with us here at Liberty University. Jerry Falwell Jr., Robert Hurt, Dave Bratt, Scott Lamb. Thanks for everybody. Tomorrow.
WJFN, Goochland, Richmond, 100.5 FM. Real news, real talk.